Well, listen, I think we'll get started. So this is our would normally be our last session this year, and we are finishing today, of course, our year-long and delightful stay in Venice with reading Ruskin's The Stones of Venice with the aid of Emma and Miriam and the Forest Center in Venice. It's well, we'll talk about that later, but it's been a delightful year to sit with and work through all the Stones of Venice. Um, I just wanted to say something about the rationale before we begin, the rationale behind the selection of paragraphs for today. In this last section of chapter 6, on the nature of Gothic, I I thought we would look at paragraph 72 through 79, which finishes the list of the 6 characteristics. So we will have gone through the 6 characteristics, and there will be a pop quiz at the end of this, whether you can whether you can list them from memory. But anyway, we will finish up our consideration of the 6 characteristics. We're skipping the 20 pages in the center because Ruskin gets into the forms of Gothic, and it's an intricate set of arguments that refers back almost continually to Volume 1, when he discusses the elements of architecture, and then anticipates Volume 3, where he discusses the characteristics of specific buildings. And it just seemed to me that was a fairly ambitious, section for us to get through, when we might not be able to do it justice. Although I'm disappointed that we won't be able to read about the thorn foliage which turns into dragons. It is a wonderful, wonderful passage.
And amazing drawings.
Oh yes, absolutely.
The drawings of the dragons, just
yes.
great.
Yes,
terrific stuff.
So anyway, if we have time, we might be able to zoom back into that. But so we'll go to 105 to 114, which wraps up and finishes the chapter. Brief reflections on good and bad architecture as a whole, and that kind of moves for the reader of the whole book, reads into the next, it flows into the next section. And then I hope we have time to maybe share a little bit of any particular insights or reflections people have about the studies this year, about what they've gained from this reading of the Stones. And with that, I think let's just jump in. Emma will.
Yes, good evening. Good evening or good morning. Sorry, this is good morning for you. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And I am very, very happy. I mean, I've enjoyed this reading of the Stones of Venice with you. Miriam apologizes because she won't be able to join because she is in Ravenna at the moment for a conference. So she is not here, and she says, I mean, she apologizes for this. We can start reading, and as we did last time, perhaps we can read 2-3 paragraphs each, and then stop and comment if it's okay.
But for this, I think, Emma, I'd suggest maybe we read from 72 to 78.
One person, just one reader.
No, different people reading.
Yes,
we
exactly.
read it as a group of, and then when we finished, we can have discussion. And then I think 78 and 79 kind of take us in a different direction. So.
Okay, so 72 is quite short, so perhaps we can, one reader could read 72 and 73, maybe grotesque and rigidity, and then we continue.
Sure.
So we can, who would like to start reading? Would you like to start reading, Gabriel? Would you like?
Start. Very good.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Good to see you, Elizabeth.
Hi.
The fourth essential element of the Gothic mind, remembering again, we've gone through savagery and changefulness and what is the I'm blanking on it. Changefulness,
Naturalism, yeah.
a naturalism. Good. Then we've now moved on to the fourth of the. I've lost my place. Okay, here we are. The fourth essential element of the Gothic mind was above stated to be the sense of the grotesque, but I shall defer the endeavor to define this most curious and subtle character until we have occasion to examine one of the divisions of the Renaissance schools, which was morbidly influenced by it. And this, of course, is that section that we've already considered on grotesque Renaissance as part of his breakdown of the characteristics of the Renaissance. It is the less necessary to insist upon it here because every reader familiar with Gothic architecture must understand what I mean, and will, I believe, have no hesitation in admitting that the tendency to delight in fantastic and ludicrous, as well as in sublime images, is a universal instinct of the Gothic imagination. The fifth element above named was rigidity, and this character I must endeavor carefully to define, for neither the word I have used nor any other that I can think of will express it accurately. For I mean not merely stable, but active rigidity. The peculiar energy which gives tension to movement and stiffness to resistance, which makes the fiercest lightning forked rather than curved, and the stoutest oak branch angular rather than bending, and is as much seen in the quivering of the lance as in the glittering of the icicle.
Yeah.
Great last sentence there.
Yes, yes.
Terrific.
Yes. We can continue. We can continue reading. Perhaps Nicholas could continue. Would you like to continue, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
So paragraph 74.
74 and 75, I would say,
okay.
the two. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I have before had occasion to note some manifestations of this energy or fixedness, but it must be still more attentively considered here, as it shows itself throughout the whole structure and decoration of Gothic work. Egyptian and Greek buildings stand for the most part by their own weight and mass, one stone passively incumbent on another. But in the Gothic vaults and traceries there is a stiffness analogous to that of the bones of a limb or fibres of a tree, an elastic tension and communication of force from part to part, and also a studious expression of this throughout every visible line of the building. And in like manner the Greek and Egyptian ornament is either mere surface engraving, as if the face of the wall had been stamped with a seal, or its lines are flowing, lithe and luxuriant. In either case, there is no expression of energy in the framework of the ornament itself. But the Gothic ornament stands out in prickly independence and frosty fortitude, jutting into crockets and freezing into pinnacles, here starting up into a monster, there germinating into a blossom, anon knitting itself into a branch alternately thorny, bossy, and bristly, or writhed into every form of nervous entanglement. But even when most graceful, never for an instant languid, always quick-set, erring, if at all, ever on the side of brusquerie. The feelings or habits in the workman which give rise to this character in the work are more complicated and various than those indicated by any other sculptural expression hitherto named. There is first the habit of hard and rapid working, the industry of the tribes of the north, quickened by the coldness of the climate and giving an expression of sharp energy to all they do, as opposed to the languor of the southern tribes, however much of fire there may be in the heart of that languor, for lava itself may flow languidly. There is also the habit of finding enjoyment in the signs of cold, which is never found, I believe, in the inhabitants of countries south of the Alps. Cold is to them an unredeemed evil, to be suffered and forgotten as soon as may be. But the long winter of the north forces the Goth, I mean the Englishman, Frenchman, Dane, or German, if he would lead a happy life at all, to find sources of happiness in foul weather as well as fair, and to rejoice in the leafless as well as in the shady forest. And this we do with all our hearts, finding perhaps nearly as much contentment by the Christmas fire as in the summer sunshine, and gaining health and strength on the ice fields of winter as well as among the meadows of spring. So that there is nothing adverse or painful to our feelings in the cramped and stiffened structure of vegetation checked by cold. And instead of seeking, like the southern sculpture, to express only the softness of leafage nourished in all tenderness and tempted into all luxuriance by warm winds and glowing rays, we find pleasure in dwelling upon the crabbed, perverse, and morose animation of plants that have known little kindness from earth or heaven, but season after season have had their best efforts palsied by frost, their brightest buds buried under snow, and their goodliest limbs lopped by tempest.
Thank you very much. Shall we continue reading,
No, I think,
Gabriel?
why
Is
don't
it
we take
okay for you, or shall we stop?
just take a little break and then we can go on.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
yes, for comments.
Yeah.
About yes, these two characteristics of yes.
It's a fascinating exposition, isn't it? Because
It is.
it made me think of particular kinds of music, of, for example, some of the music of Mozart, where there's a very distinct structure, and yet there's an emotion which is struggling against the structure. And there's a tension in that. And I find that it's a fascinating analysis on his part.
Yeah.
His idea that there's something languid in Italy is curious. I'm not sure I would entirely agree with that, but then I don't know what others think.
Right.
I
Well,
mean,
yeah,
I don't find
there's-
I don't find Dante particularly languid, just for example.
Yes. Well, he's a Northern Italian.
Of course, yes. Yes,
But
yes,
one thing that strikes me too is just that general idea that comes into his analysis of Turner, which
yes,
is, and it's so deep in Ruskin. Ruskin is opposed to notions of nature as order.
yes,
What he sees is nature as energy.
yes,
He learned that from Turner.
yes,
That from Turner landscapes, the landscapes of Claude and so forth, these were celebrations of nature as order.
yeah,
And Turner sees nature moving, always moving, the energy of all that movement constantly. So that's I think at the heart of Ruskin's analysis on all sorts of levels is this love of nature and the celebration of nature as energy.
yes. I think that's,
Even as dark energy in some cases.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
And I see at 74, talking about energy, I kind of relate to the law of help. One piece of the building helps the other, helps the other, helps the other. That's the movement of the energy.
Mm.
Yes,
No,
absolutely.
that's very interesting.
Yes,
Yes,
Argument.
absolutely.
yes.
There's a flow through the separate parts of the building.
And if I can add to this to what Gabriel has said about Turner, I would like also to add that in exactly those years, as you know, Ruskin had discovered Tintoretto, and
Mm.
he finds and in his writings on Tintoretto, and as you know, the appendix, one of the several appendixes
Mm.
to Stones of Venice, is devoted to the Venetian Index, and the
Mhm.
Venetian Index is in fact a Tintoretto guide because he points at the buildings that a traveler must absolutely to visit, and all of them contain Tintoretto.
Mm.
So he was really very interested in Tintoretto, and I have also written an essay on this. And he finds that Tintoretto's energy as an artist, Tintoretto was similar to Turner.
Mhm.
So there is a likeness, and also that Turner was had stolen. At some point, he says in a letter, I have eventually found where the old fox, that is Turner, had stolen from, and it was Tintoretto.
Yeah.
So what you are saying about energy, I absolutely find it, and in Turner and also Tintoretto is that kind of artist that
Right.
has taught him how to look possibly at buildings. This,
Yes.
Well, you
yes,
think of the tint of so many of the Tintoretto religious paintings are just uh, full of movement,
Mm,
yes,
and
yes,
just a radical kind of.
mm,
You can feel the wind,
exactly.
moving through the scene. Yeah.
And he paid attention to nature,
Mhm.
to the nature that which is very often overlooked, because that Tintoretto does not seem to be a painter of landscapes and nature, but
mm.
Ruskin looks at them and says and finds this energy there. So
There is
yes,
that, just picking up on that Tintoretto for a moment, he doesn't usually paint nature, but occasionally he does. And when he does, it can be quite extraordinary. I'm thinking now of the image of St. Mary of Egypt in
yes,
Mm.
Gola,
absolutely, yes,
Sunrise,
Well, yeah, yeah.
which
yes,
includes a most, if
absolutely.
I
That's a
remember
wonderful
rightly,
painting.
an
Yeah.
extraordinary palm tree that seems to be in movement,
Yes,
if I remember.
absolutely. With the roots also of
Yes,
the
good
tree.
point.
You remember, very
Yes,
yes,
yes, I've forgotten that.
movement.
Yes,
Yes, and
yes.
that entanglement, nervous entanglement.
Entanglement, yeah.
Yes, is quite
Entanglement. Oh, that's
yes,
great, Emma, may I say. Emotional entanglement. That's great.
yes,
Nervous entanglement. Yes, yes, I
yeah,
think that's great.
yes.
I
Thank you.
think he is consciously writing to remind us of his just so deeply fundamental lesson to everything that all great art is sourced in nature. And he's not talking about a particular artist here, but he is telling us again, and the lovely images of the north and the buds that are under snow and everything,
Mm,
he's reminding us that behind everything is nature and that we ourselves are of nature and we have to see that. And I think he does it very beautifully. These are rather what uh, probably generally not read very often or very profoundly paragraphs. But this is Ruskin at his quiet best, I think.
Mhm.
The genius comes out in the metaphors, the images, time and time again, and very gently, but reminding us subtly of what his fundamental teachings are.
mm, mm,
Yes,
definitely.
thank you, thank you. Shall we
Go on.
continue, or we can continue from
Sure.
76,
76. Yeah.
76 and 77, maybe. Um, Jim or Victoria, you are leaving. Would you like to read before leaving?
Victoria's leaving. She should read it.
Please.
I'll stay for a while.
Jim.
Oh, I wish I could. I'm on my phone, so I don't have the text.
All right. I'm
But thank you
sorry.
for the invitation. I absolutely love reading, and I that's why I've left all the messages in the chat. I have a roof being put on my house,
Okay.
so I'm escaping.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Tanti auguri e grazie.
Grazie, tanti auguri.
Ci vedremo nel nuovo anno. Spero.
Va bene,
Ciao,
certo, con
grazie,
piacere.
grazie.
Ciao, ciao,
Ciao.
ciao Vittoria, ciao, ciao.
Perhaps, Elizabeth, do you have the text?
Because I can't read all the, the names, so I'm sorry.
No,
Elizabeth?
fine.
Yes.
Or, yes, thank you.
All right. 76. There are many subtle sympathies and affections which join to confirm the Gothic mind in this peculiar choice of subject. And when we add to the influence of these the necessities consequent upon the employment of a rougher material, compelling the workman to seek for vigor of effect rather than refinement of texture or accuracy of form, we have direct and manifest causes for much of the difference between the northern and southern cast of conception. But there are indirect causes holding a far more important place in the Gothic heart, though less immediate in their influence on design. Strength of will, independence of character, resoluteness of purpose, impatience of undue control, and that general tendency to set the individual reason against authority, and the individual deed against destiny, which in the northern tribes has opposed itself throughout all ages to the languid submission in the southern of thought to tradition and purpose to fatality, are all more or less traceable in the rigid lines, vigorous and various masses, and daringly projecting an independent structure of the northern Gothic ornament, while the opposite feelings are in like manner legible in the graceful and softly guided waves and wreathed bands in which the southern decoration is constantly disposed, in its tendency to lose its independence and fuse itself into the surface of the masses upon which it is traced, and in the expression seen so often in the arrangement of those masses themselves, of an abandonment of their strength to an inevitable necessity or a listless repose. There is virtue in the measure and error in the excess of both of these characters of mind, and in both of the styles which they have created. The best architecture and the best temper are those which unite them both. And this fifth impulse of the Gothic heart is therefore that which needs most caution in its indulgence. It is more definitely Gothic than any other, but the best Gothic building is not that which is most Gothic. It can hardly be too frank in its confession of rudeness, hardly too rich in its changefulness, hardly too faithful in its naturalism, but it may go too far in its rigidity, and like the great Puritan spirit in its extreme, lose itself in frivolity or diversion or perversity of purpose. It actually did so in its latter times, but it is gladdening to remember that in its utmost nobleness, the very temper which has been thought most adverse to it, the Protestant spirit of self-dependence and inquiry, was expressed in its every line. Faith and aspiration were there in every Christian ecclesiastical building from the 1st century to the 15th, but the moral habits to which England in this age owes the kind of greatness that she has, the habits of philosophical investigation, of accurate thought, of domestic seclusion and independence, of stern self-reliance and sincere searching into religious truth, were only traceable in the features which were the distinctive creation of the Gothic schools, in the veined foliage, the thorny fretwork, the shadowy niche, the buttressed pier, and fearless height of subtle pinnacle and crested tower, sent like an unperplexed question up to heaven.
That last, of course, is a reference to a line in Barrett Browning's poem. Ruskin was a great admirer of Elizabeth Barrett Browning
Yes,
and
he
her
was.
work. And it's in one of her poems, which is a description of Florence. And I'm reading the line here. I've just got it noted in the margins of my copy here. where Giotto in Florence, where Giotto planted his campanile like an unperplexed fine question heavenward.
Mm.
And this is the background of that quote of the an unperplexed question up to heavens,
Mm. Mm.
which is a wonderful line.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So
I was intrigued by him referring to the great Puritan spirit in its extreme,
Yeah,
losing itself either in frivolity of division or perversity of purpose. And then he refers to um, Walter Scott's Heart of Midlothian,
yeah,
and he seems to see the Puritan habit of naming one another after months and days of the week as a sort of frivolity uh, or perversity of purpose. I'm not quite sure what he means there.
yeah. Is someone on a phone or something that we're hearing?
Yes,
Yeah,
something's going on. I don't know.
I would recommend, by the way, that those of us that are not speaking mute our things so as to remove the possibility of that occurring. I think it's ambient noise from one of us that here.
Mm,
For my part, I will mute myself.
mm. Yeah, so I don't know if anybody has any views on what he means by that extremity of Puritanism. Uh, Something that is curious in Ruskin is that he is brought up as a Protestant of a kind,
mm,
but
Of a very special
enjoys,
kind.
yes, um, but he luxuriates in what can be seen as Catholic imagery,
mm-hmm.
and he does so at a dangerous time in the politics of the Church of England.
Yeah,
mm,
I find that very interesting. And this criticism of Puritanism, extreme Puritanism, he seems to be referring actually to what in his time would be Puritanism, particularly apparent in America and
but
particularly in Massachusetts.
yeah, I think he's referring to something less specific, but to the tendency of the Puritans in their extreme form to frivolity of division,
Mm,
getting involved in all sorts of intricate dividing over small issues,
mm, mm,
and then this kind of tendency to see pagan influences in it, wanting to
mm,
rename the days of the week and to remove
mm,
pagan influences from society. That
mm,
kind of extreme uh, uh, Puritan, we might say, uh, divisiveness, which of course is
mm,
a general characteristic of Puritan movements with a small p, uh,
mm, mm,
to be devoted to purity in some cases to such an extreme that it
mm,
produces nothing but division and an endless kind of rancor. But I think he's referring here to that extreme the rigidity. Remember, we're looking at rigidity, that extreme tendency to and of course he's using this in an architectural sense that one can take this principle of rigid form too far,
mm,
and so he's trying to make an analogy. But I think in
One,
general, as you point out rightly, Nick, there is, especially in Stones of Venice, Ruskin was a low church Anglican, raised in a low church Anglican. So there were evangelical elements in his own upbringing. He's loving and studying Catholic architecture
mm,
and having periodically to reassure himself that it's all right for him to be doing this.
yeah.
And to see a quote a good Protestant spirit in this
Yes.
Later on, he loses that
Yes.
the need to
To do that.
make
Yeah,
these
that's a very good
excuses.
point. One of the things that's curious right the way through this particular set of passages that we're studying at the moment is that he has absolutely no time for what in the history of English Gothic architecture is called early English. And he points particularly to the east end of Westminster Abbey, which he sees as particularly objectionable
Mm.
because it has no decoration. And it consists of arches, effectively rows of arches, one on top of the other.
Right, right.
He particularly dislikes the top row of the east end of Westminster Abbey. And I found it an extraordinary criticism because it simply didn't acknowledge that this is a form of 13th century French Gothic in Westminster Abbey, because it's by a French architect, which fitted perfectly with the Gothic of that period, because it is pre-decorated. It's earlier. And it's intriguing to me that Ruskin he loves this luxuriance and foliage and the energy of that. And he sweeps us up into his enthusiasm for that. But he has no respect for that earlier period of what is arguably, from the architectural point of view, because it emphasizes the bones of the building and not the flesh of the foliage, it is absolutely remarkable architecture.
I think that Ruskin is always, always interested in what I would call, I bet he would call too in his way, the dance of life. There are so many wonderful things in nature. There are so many wonderful things surrounding us all the time. And he makes that point about how people of the North had to learn to delight in the leafless trees. And he wants to point us out. So I think that's one of the reasons he doesn't like any of these rather more staid areas of churches and so on. And that passage that we had at the end of 75 that I thought was really terrific. He talks about the morose animation of plants that have had little kindness from earth or heaven. But there's something beautiful in that, he's saying. But season after season have had their best efforts palsied by frost, their brightest bulbs buried by snow, and their goodliest limbs lopped by tempest, always bringing us back to nature and its wonders.
Yeah.
The dance of life.
Yeah. We have to remember that the kind of Ruskinian doctrine that the meaning of the building is expressed in ornamentation, in its ornamentation, because the ornamentation is what the building is praising. All great art is praise. So that whole Ruskinian doctrine, in a way, that the ornamentation reveals what the building means, what it praises. And hence, of course, Lewis's great "all ornamentation is crime," which is anti-Ruskinian, right?
Absolutely.
But
extraordinary.
Also, as you point out, Nick, there was the Cistercian movement in France, which, of course, celebrated a utterly stripped down, Catholic Zen, form of church architecture, even without stained glass, that would pervert the beauty of natural light. So that's reflected in some forms of English Gothic too.
Well, certainly, and in the Cistercian monasteries of Yorkshire, particularly, it is very, very evident. And there are many who would argue that there is, even if it is quite a puritanical beauty, that there is extreme beauty in that fundamental emphasis on structure. And it's curious to me as well, because elsewhere in this later passage, he talks about roofs as an indication of Gothic, if they are gabled roofs, and then have arch as part of the inner structure. And at that point, he is sometimes indicating that if you excessively ornament that fundamental architecture, then it removes architectural strength because it weakens the pointed arch. And that's an extremely fair point. But in that instance, he's referring to Gothic as structure and not as anything to do with ornament.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that when he talks about ornamentation, he's talking about the workmen who did that.
He
Uh,
is. You're right. That's very good.
Yeah,
is he happy
very
or
good.
is he not happy? It's a sign of happiness.
Yeah, that's excellent, Claudio. Yes, yes. Yes, it is. I've always wondered whether that was actually the case. It's a lovely idea that the workman is expressing joy in being and expressing that joy through his work. And I just wonder to what extent that was true and to what extent actually the workmen were controlled by their foreman, their supervisor, or by the patron. It's something that's central to what Ruskin believes coming out of the Stones of Venice, isn't it? The freedom of the workman to express himself. But I've often wondered about the underlying politics of that.
I
And
imagine it would depend on the master builder's own view of things.
indeed, and the master builders um, allowance to the
That's
work
right. Yeah.
to express themselves, or were these things actually drawn out very deliberately first, as we know now that so much of cathedral architecture was drawn before being executed. You wonder whether actually there were drawings for such things, and the drawings might have been made by the master builder.
However, there are so many examples of really grotesque imagery, which seems so personal and so
Yeah,
individual
that's
that
true.
that it's certainly in many cases we would have had the mason must have had the freedom,
Yeah,
That's right. So
that's
I often think of it. I often think of it as that the sculptors are. It's their moment to figure out how to ornament this building, and one fellow comes on another and he says, "Oh, that's a great dog you're making," and then says to himself, sort of delightfully, "But we need a wolf, and I have an idea to do a wolf," and that's that kind of spontaneous creation that I think is so important in Ruskin's mind.
mm, mm, mm,
Hmm.
Well, if we take an example, for example, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, which is in its current form a end of the Romanesque, beginning early Gothic building. Well, what we know of the process was there was a master builder only occasionally. The local masons were basically making all sorts of choices. We know that because of the highly individual and often rather crazy character of some of the stonework.
mhm,
It was clearly built by different people at different periods who found different stones in the ruins of other buildings and
mhm, mhm,
incorporated them. So it was only occasionally, quite clearly in the building of that church, that there was a real architect
mm.
present to direct the situation. A lot of it was patchwork and individual masons,
Taking decisions.
making decisions. So
Yeah.
I do think there's evidence that there was a certain uh, uh, there were periods of freedom in the creation of the great cathedrals.
Mm,
Simply because there couldn't always be, and there wouldn't always have been a master architect present.
mm. No, that's very interesting. Yeah.
There's a Brazilian architect called Sérgio Ferro, and he says that the Gothic workers, they didn't draw anything. They just built it,
Mm,
and they saw what happened in the end. Lots of churches fell down in the end,
mm,
but not lots of are still there. And I always wondered what the difference between Gothic and Neo-Gothic was. And formally, they're the same, most of them. But Neo-Gothic has that architect that's saying, do this, do that. And Gothic doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting.
Thank you. So we can perhaps continue reading. The next paragraph is on redundance, and I think we find some answer also concerning the Puritan. What he says about the Puritan art and redundance seems to be just the opposite of what he defines as Puritan. And also here he talks about overabundance, ornament for, the wealth of it. So we can read paragraph 78 and 79. Bernie, would you like to read? I can see you. Can
Yes,
you read?
I
Is
would
it?
be happy. I would be happy to do so.
Thank
Yes,
you. Thank you very much.
thank you. Last, because the least essential of the constituent elements of this noble school was placed that of redundance, the uncalculating bestowal of the wealth of its labor. There is indeed much Gothic, and that of the best period, in which this element is hardly traceable, and which depends for its effect almost exclusively on loveliness of simple design and grace of uninvolved proportion. Still, in the most characteristic buildings, a certain portion of their effect depends upon accumulation of ornament, and many of those which have most influence on the minds of men have attained it by means of this attribute alone. And although, by careful study of this school, it is possible to arrive at a condition of taste which shall be better contented by a few perfect lines than by a whole facade covered with fretwork, the building which only satisfied such a taste is not to be considered the best. For the very first requirement of Gothic architecture being, as we saw above, that it shall admit the aid and appeal to the admiration of the rudest as well as the most refined minds. The richness of the work is paradoxical as the statement may appear, part of its humility. No architecture is so haughty as that which is simple, which refuses to address the eye, except in a few clear and forceful lines, which implies in offering so little to our regards that all it has offered is perfect, and disdains, either by the complexity or the attractiveness of its features, to embarrass our investigation or to betray us into delight. That humility, which is the very life of the Gothic school, is shown not only in the imperfection, but in the accumulation of ornament. The inferior rank of the workman is often shown as much in the richness as the roughness of his work, and if the cooperation of every hand and the sympathy of every heart are to be received, we must be content to allow the redundance which disguises the failure of the feeble, and wins the regard of the inattentive. There are, however, far nobler interests mingling in the Gothic heart, with the rude love of decorative accumulation, a magnificent enthusiasm which feels as if it never could do enough to reach the fullness of its ideal, an unselfishness of sacrifice, which would rather cast fruitless labor before the altar than stand idle in the market, and finally, a profound sympathy with the fullness and wealth of the material universe, rising out of that naturalism whose operation we have already endeavored to define. The sculptor who sought for his models among the forest leaves could not but quickly and deeply feel that complexity need not involve the loss of grace, nor richness that of repose, and every hour which he spent in the study of the minute and various work of nature made him feel more forcibly the barrenness of what was best in that of man. Nor is it to be wondered at that, seeing her perfect and exquisite creations poured forth in a profusion which conception could not grasp, nor calculation sum, he should think it ill became him, to be niggardly of his own rude craftsmanship, and where he saw throughout the universe a faultless beauty lavished on the measureless spaces of embroidered field and blooming mountain, to grudge his poor and imperfect labor to the few stones that he had raised one upon another, for habitation or memorial. The years of his life passed away before his task was accomplished, but generation succeeded generation with unwearied enthusiasm, and the cathedral front was at last lost in the tapestry of its traceries, like a rock among the thickets and herbage of spring. We have now, I believe, obtained a view approaching to completeness of the various moral or imaginative elements which compose the inner spirit of Gothic architecture. We have, in the second place, to define its outward form. Now, as the Gothic spirit is made up of several elements, some of which may in particular examples be wanting, so the Gothic form is made up of minor conditions of form, some of which may in particular examples be imperfectly developed. We cannot say, therefore, that a building is either Gothic or not Gothic in form, any more than we can in spirit. We can only say that it is more or less Gothic in proportion to the number of Gothic forms which it unites.
Thank you.
I'd like to remind us of a point that I made a couple of sessions ago, that what he is doing here, at least as I see it, is that he's creating a Platonic model of the form of Gothic. And here are 6 elements of it. And he talks about them at various lengths, as we know. But the point is to alert us to things in nature having a form. An automobile has a form, a house has a form, a tree has a form. And we understand the nature of the thing by understanding what the constituent elements of the form are and how they work together. And this is a great couple of paragraphs here, because he's really pulling together the whole idea of creating the form of the Gothic. It's a Platonic model. He's a great fan of Plato's, but here he does it very beautifully.
Yeah.
What is also interesting is that it says that Gothic is something, what we infer is something that comes from several elements, which is the combination which makes Gothic, and the degree. I mean, there is a degree. We can only say that it is more or less Gothic. So in a way, there is a definition, but also an attempt to avoid rigid definitions at the same time, isn't it? So as probably Gothic for Ruskin is not something that you can define clearly. It's made as an assemblage of elements. That's I find wonderful, of course, this text, but also puzzling in a way, because we are following him in these descriptions which are really how can I say, a progress through a wood in a way. You know, we are exploring something that is unseizable in a way. This is my impression. Something that is overwhelming in a way.
Yeah.
I think another very intriguing aspect of this is the weaving in of the workman into this view of Gothic, which may end up containing many imperfections. And just picking up on Claudia's point about the workman involved, when he says here, this is in 78, the inferior rank of the workman is often shown as much in the richness as the roughness of his work. So both those things seem to be important in Gothic, and he seems to be doing away with the significance of ranks of the work people.
Mhm.
I find that very, very interesting.
Yeah.
His view is that no matter how inferior the workman may be in ranking, nonetheless, he may be able to produce something which is expressive and beautiful.
Yeah.
Because, Nick,
Yes.
he's a
Yes,
living,
thank you.
breathing human being.
Because he's a
And I
living,
think this
breathing human being. Yeah.
And I think this is one of the fundamental things about why we cannot capture a single thing for all time as being the, I don't know, the quintessence of Gothic. It's constantly changing. Changefulness is indeed one of the central elements.
Mm,
Life doesn't stay the same. It changes, it vibrates. What did William James called it? The universe is a buzzing, booming confusion. And I
mm,
think that Ruskin recognizes this, and that the same is true in buildings as well. So
Yeah.
this Gothic building is like this, and it dances in that way, and that Gothic building is that, and it dances in another way,
Mm.
and a new Gothic building, if it comes up, will dance in yet a third way. This
mm,
idea of a buzzing, booming, confusing confusion of the universe, which is glorious in its essence, is so much at the central heart of what he argues.
mm.
Mhm.
But
I think
so
also
much.
that,
Sorry,
go,
Gabriel.
go ahead, Nick.
Just to say that he was, as we know, horrified by the kind of Gothic that was produced ostensibly under his influence. And there's only one building that I know that could be referred to as containing the full expression of the workman, and that is the Oxford University Museum, in which Ruskin had a hand. And the work people there, the carvers, were the O'Shea brothers, Irish brothers, and they were let rip on the carving of ornament, somewhat to the detriment of the professors at Oxford University, who were sometimes caricatured by
Yes.
on the building. But that's the only instance that I know, and maybe others of you will know other examples, where the workman was let loose in neo-Gothic architecture. And that's again picking up a point that Claudia was making.
Well, there was also another example at Yale. One of the buildings at Yale was made by an American architect who adopted Ruskin's principles and who allowed the workmen great
Uh-huh.
latitude in creating
Hmm.
the ornamental aspect of it. The problem of much so-called Ruskinian Gothic in Britain was again, as Claudia would underline, was the method itself. You had a master architect and you had workers who were doing exactly what they were told to do.
Mm, mm, mm.
The model was all wrong. Because the
Yep.
intention may have been to create Gothic architecture, but from a Ruskinian sense, the method was all wrong.
Yep.
The master architect, the dominating the entire proceeding, and the workmen simply being tools of the
Yes.
architect's vision.
Yes, and the person who comes to mind with regard to that is G.E. Street,
Mm-hmm.
the teacher of Morris,
Mm-hmm.
who, as we're talking, he's come into my mind because he designed every detail of the building,
Yeah,
down to the door handles.
right.
So he was an example of the master builder who was all controlling. And though a contemporary of Ruskin could be described as fundamentally anti-Ruskinian,
Right,
and actually that thought's only just occurred to me.
right.
So,
Because
what?
for Ruskin, Gothic isn't just style, it's a
No,
method.
no, it's a whole spirit of
Yeah,
life.
yeah, exactly.
That's right.
But involves these
Really.
methodological aspects, not just simply style elements.
Mm.
How is the workman incorporated into the process?
Exactly, and that then makes me think of those earlier passages that we were reading in an earlier session about the contrast to that, where men in particular are being used as leathern thongs to yoke machinery with.
Right.
That's what he finds so extremely distasteful,
Yes.
evidence
Yes.
of slavery. And the contrast is that the workman becomes part and parcel of the stone that he's carving, and that is
That's
rather,
right.
I think.
He puts his spirit into that stone.
He does. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Isn't there a church in central London that was part of the neo-Gothic style that Ruskin liked? I can't remember the name of it, but I remember him writing about it as one of the few examples of where the Gothic spirit was alive in London, modern London.
Yeah, it's a good point. It wasn't All Saints Margaret Street, was it?
I think it probably was, yes.
Butterfield Church.
Yes.
I think that might have come quite close to what Ruskin was after. But even there would have been an overseeing eye of William Butterfield. And so that
But again, I think one of the crucial things that we've been saying throughout is that, again, Gothic isn't a style. For Ruskin, it's the evocation of an organic relationship with nature and an organic relationship with work. So, I mean, in an inorganic age, in an age which is tending to the Industrial Revolution, to greater and greater inorganic and abstract and artificial forms, Ruskin is hearkening back to the only example he has ever really found of an organic way of life.
That's right.
Appeal again.
That's quite right. Yeah.
To an appeal to his generation, to see this vision of what life really could be, as Claudia mentioned about the law of help, that we see it as an organic whole and of indispensable parts of an organic relationship, rather than this artificial reality of owner and slave, and and the kind of art that it produces.
And in this, imperfection is very important, isn't it?
Yes.
As opposed to Greco-Roman architecture, where the moldings are precisely cut and repetitive.
Right.
Here, there may be a mistake, and we can often see that in medieval buildings. And it's refreshing, isn't it? It's a bit like the difference between, forgive me for this, but I once knew a music producer who explained to me how music is produced for a recording. And what he was saying is that when you're producing something like Bach's cello suite or something like that, then what you may be doing is asking the performer to play again and again the same few notes, and then you as producer, you excerpt or sample the best note from each take of the recording, and you assemble it into a whole so that it is perfect.
Right.
And some much more educated musicians than I am would recognize immediately that this destroys the fundamental spirit of music.
Oh, yeah.
In which there need to be imperfections.
Right. It's what some musician friends of mine used to say. We don't know the piece well enough to perform it, but we could record it.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. Very good. Yes. Horrific.
I think of directors of plays or of films who do so many takes or so many practice rehearsals of a scene to try to get it just with the way that they want it, and oftentimes they never finally do.
And they lose the spirit of it.
That's right, and that's the great variety and changefulness of life itself.
Yeah.
Emma, shall we move on? Is it?
Yes, we can continue and go to paragraph 105. And Jim, maybe would you like to read, please?
Oh, yes, I would, but let me get there. 105.
Jim, these are very brief paragraphs. So why don't you read up
Yeah,
to
it's 105,
to
please.
110.
Now the reader.
Yeah, I see where you are.
110, the bottom of the page. Don't go further than very bad architecture. So
So am I reading at
105
105?
to part of 110.
I'm sorry, I'm confused now. Am I reading at 105 or I'm going to read at 110?
105, 106, 107, 108, 109, and part of 110.
So I tell you, so I'll start at 105.
Yep.
Okay. Now the reader may rest assured that no principle of art is more absolute than this, that a composition from which anything can be removed without doing mischief is always so far forth inferior. On this ground, therefore, if on no other, there can be no question for a moment which of the two schools is the greater, although there may be many most noble works in the French traceried Gothic having a sublimity of their own, dependent on the extreme richness and grace of line, and for which we may be most grateful to their builders. And indeed, the superiority of the surface Gothic cannot be completely felt until we compare it with the more degraded linear schools, as for instance with our English perpendicular. The ornaments of the Veronese niche, which we have used for our example, are by no means among the best of their school, and yet they will serve our purpose for such a comparison. That of its pinnacle is composed of a single upright flowering plant, of which the stem shoots up through the centers of the leaves and bears a pendant blossom, somewhat like that of imperial Italy. The leaves are thrown back from the stem with singular grace and freedom and foreshortened as if by a skillful painter in the shallow marble relief. Their arrangement is roughly shown in the little woodcut at the side, figure 20, and if you have your library edition page in front of you, it's there to the left. And if the reader will simply try the experiment for himself, first of covering a piece of paper with crossed lines, as if for accounts, and filling all the interstices with any foliation that comes into his head, as in figure 19 above, and then trying to fill the point of the gable with a piece of leafage like that in figure 20, putting the figure itself aside, he will presently find that more thought and invention are required to design this single minute pinnacle than to cover acres of ground with English perpendicular. You want me to go on, Emma?
Yeah.
Yes, please. If you feel like,
I'll
Jim,
read
if it's okay
106.
for you.
I tell you what, I'll read 106
Okay.
and 107
Okay.
and then give it to somebody else. 106.
Okay. Thank you.
We have now, I believe, obtained a sufficiently accurate knowledge both of the spirit and form of Gothic architecture, but it may perhaps be useful to the general reader if, in conclusion, I set down a few plain and practical rules for determining in every instance whether a given building is to be good Gothic or not, and if not Gothic, whether its architecture is of a kind which will probably reward the pains of careful examination. So now he gives his list. Paragraph 107. First,
Yes.
look if the roof rises in a steep gable high above the walls. If it does not do this, there is something wrong. The building is not quite pure Gothic or it's been altered. And then I'll stop there and let somebody else take over.
Okay. Thank you. Claudio, would you like to read? Claudio?
Okay, I'll read.
Thank you. 108.
Okay.
Thank you.
Secondly, look if the principal windows and doors have pointed arches with gables over them. If not pointed arches, the building is not Gothic. If they have not any gables over them, it is either not pure or not first rate. If, however, it has the steep roof, the pointed arch, the gable, all united, it is nearly certain to be a Gothic building of a very fine time. Thirdly, look if the arches are cusped or apertures, foliated. If the building has met the first two conditions, it is sure to be foliated somewhere, but if not everywhere, the parts which are unfoliated are imperfect, unless they are large, bearing arches, or small and sharp arches in groups forming a kind of foliation by their own multiplicity and relieved by sculpture and rich moldings. The upper windows, for instance, in the east end of Westminster Abbey, are imperfect for want of foliation. If there be no foliation anywhere, the building is assuredly in perfect Gothic.
Thank you.
Continue, maybe. Claudia?
Sorry? Oh, okay.
Would you like to, yes, to end 110?
Okay. No, I wanted it. Fourthly, if the builder meets all the first three conditions, look if its arches in general, whether of windows and doors or of minor ornamentation, are carried on true shafts with bases and capitals. If they are, then the building is assuredly of the finest Gothic style. It may still, perhaps, be an imitation, a feeble copy, or a bad example of a noble style, but the manner of it, having met of all these four conditions, is assuredly first rate. If its apertures have not shafts and capitals, look if they are plain openings in the walls, studiously simple and unmolded at the sides, as for instance the arch of the plate 19, page 323, volume 1. If so, the building may still be on the finest Gothic, adapted to some domestic or military service, but if the sides of the windows be molded, and yet there are no capitals at the spring of the arch, it is assuredly of an inferior school. This is all that is necessary to determine whether the building be of fine Gothic style. The next tests to be applied are in order to discover whether it be good architecture or not, for it may be very impure Gothic and yet very noble architecture, or it may be very pure Gothic and yet, if a copy or originally raised by an ungifted builder, very bad architecture.
Yeah, why don't you take a stop there? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want me to stop?
Yeah.
As an architect.
Well, let me just finish the
Yes.
If it belongs to any of the great schools of color, its criticism becomes as complicated and needs as much care as that of a piece of music, and so general rules for it can be given, but if not.
Yeah, that's why I had you stop, because that paragraph then leads to the conclusion.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Well, that's that bit about the east end of Westminster Abbey that
Yes.
I do find very mysterious. I now understand it better with what we've been saying about Ruskin's understanding of Gothic. That Gothic is not a style, it's a whole spirit of life. And in light of that, yes, I can kind of understand why he would make such objections to early English or French Gothic of the 13th century. He just finds it completely unacceptable. And it's very interesting to me because you'll know that George Gilbert Scott, as a neo-Gothic architect, was one of several architects at one point in Ruskin's time who was determined to return to early English, unornamented Gothic. because it was the earliest style of Gothic and therefore the purest. And Ruskin is completely denying that.
Yeah.
Denying that it has any relevance to a discussion of Gothic at all. I find it absolutely extraordinary.
Yes.
I'm reminded by a number of these comments of his statement. I don't recall quite where he says it first, that before the churches were Gothic, the houses were Gothic. And then he points out, he does in one of the sections we read today, some windows have pointed arches and some of them have semi-pointed arches. It's got to do with the people who live inside and what they liked. And again, the houses are Gothic. So if you go into any house, and I would include probably all of our houses if I had seen their insides, which I of course have not. I mean, you design a house, you design a room according to your own spirit, and then you design the next room according to your spirit. That's Gothic. I mean, in my feeling, that's Gothic. And you color your house in a certain way, and somebody else colors their house in a different way, and that's Gothic. I think of the famous painted lady houses of San Francisco. I mean, it's in the variety that the whole spirit of the place lives.
Yep. And there's a lot of actually, arguably, quite an American spirit of individualism in what you're referring to there, Jim, and effectively in what Ruskin is suggesting. It's a spirit of architecture which needs to express the individual.
That's
and that
right.
was notably
Absolutely right.
An American concern. And I find that interesting. It's
also beyond the individual, also to the expression of life.
Yes,
absolutely, yes.
Of life itself. So Ruskin, finds it a subject of rejoicing that the Gothic architect decided, well, we need a tower there. So he builds a tower and cuts off half the window. And Ruskin, again, even in a deeper way, back to his notion of being against restoration.
Yes.
Because restoration tries to return to the earliest period.
Yes.
And then it erases these vital signs of the way people
of the past life of the building. Yes, yes.
So
exactly.
Really, in Ruskin's, I think, sense, the earliest styles don't have the kind of don't have pride of place.
Yeah,
it's the development of something.
The development,
time
yes, and changes over time. Yes. It was something that Morris picked up in his manifesto for the Society for the Protection of Ancient Buildings in 1877 or 8, talking about the need. You must preserve evidence of every stage of the building, including past restorations or past repairs. There must be some evidence of every single period of the building, and that manifesto is used to this day by that society and by the better government organizations in the UK.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Very
Emma,
interesting.
shall we conclude?
Yes, shall we go? Shall we move 111? Maybe Gabriel can continue.
Yeah, I'll start in the end of 110, so we pick up the
so we go smoothly. Yes.
If it belonged to any of the great schools of color, its criticism becomes as complicated and needs as much care as that of a piece of music, and no general rules for it can be given. But if not, first, see if it looks as if it had been built by strong men, if it has the sort of roughness and largeness and nonchalance mixed in places with the exquisite tenderness which seems always to be the sign manual of the broad vision and massy power of men, who can see past the work they are doing and betray here and there something like disdain for it. If the building has this character, it is much already in its favor. It will go hard, but it proves a noble one. If it has not this, but is altogether accurate, minute, and scrupulous in its workmanship, it must belong to either the very best or the very worst of schools. The very best, in which exquisite design is wrought out with untiring and conscientious care, as in the Giottoesque Gothic, or the very worst, in which mechanism has taken the place of design. It is more likely in general that it should belong to the worst than the best, so that on the whole, very accurate workmanship is to be esteemed a bad sign, and if there is nothing remarkable about the building but its precision, it may be passed at once with contempt. Secondly, observe if it be irregular, its different parts fitting themselves to different purposes, no one caring what becomes of them so that they do their work. If one part always answers accurately to another part, it is sure to be a bad building. And the greater and more conspicuous the irregularities, the greater the chances are that it is a good one. For instance, in the Ducal Palace, of which a rough woodcut is given earlier, the general design is sternly symmetrical, but 2 windows are lower than the rest of the 6. And if the reader will count the arches of the small arcade as far as to the great balcony, he will find it is not in the center, but set to the right-hand side by the whole width of one of those arches. We may be pretty sure that the building is a good one. None but a master of his craft would have ventured to do this. Thirdly, observe if all the traceries, capitals, and other ornaments are of perpetually varied design. If not, the work is assuredly bad. Lastly, read the sculpture. Preparatory to reading it, you will have to discover whether it is legible, and if legible, it is nearly certain to be worth reading. On a good building, the sculpture is always so set, and on such a scale that at the ordinary difference from which the edifice is seen, the sculpture shall be thoroughly intelligible and interesting. In order to accomplish this, the uppermost statues will be 10 or 12 feet high, and the upper ornamentation will be colossal, increasing in fineness as it descends, till on the foundation it will often be wrought as if for a precious cabinet in a king's chamber. But the spectator will not notice that the upper sculptures are colossal. He will merely feel that can see them plainly and make them all out at his ease. And having ascertained this, let him set himself to read them. Thenceforward, the criticism of the building is to be conducted precisely on the same principles as that of a book. And it must depend on the knowledge, feeling, and not a little on the industry and perseverance of the reader, whether, even in the case of the best works, he either perceive them to be great or feel them to be entertaining.
Yeah.
One of the, I think, things he's attempted to do in his entire chapter is, as he does so often, is to teach us to read buildings. So in a way, with the 6 characteristics and his analysis of the forms, he has given us a vocabulary that we can use then to read the building. Always understanding that there will be mysterious elements. He's only given us the vocabulary. He hasn't told us what the building means or how to read it definitively. He's just given us these tools that we can use in our own way to profitably study and then to observe the life force that this building is.
It's intriguing, isn't it, that he refers so much to the classical language of architecture, insisting on true shafts with bases and capitals, which of course are taken over by Gothic architects from classical architecture,
right.
And then typically extended in height, and preserving a kind of logic in the language. By contrast, there are particularly some slightly later French Gothic churches, where the arch of the arcade supports a kind of a colonnette which simply runs over the arch and right up to the roof without any interruption at all. And that's the opposite of what he's talking about here.
Yeah.
It's another reason that he, one would imagine, would not admire that kind of later French Gothic. So it's intriguing to see that.
Well, again, I think in one sense, what he's doing is giving us this vocabulary that
Yes.
we can use to read a building, but he's also giving us an example, because what he's doing is showing us how he read buildings
Yes.
Right.
and what he saw in them.
Mm.
So in a sense, it's an invitation for you see how this is the kind of seriousness with which you need to look and to see and to understand a building. And so he's given us this these marvelous examples of his own perception and of the and what the basis is upon which he makes them.
He's also very strongly gendering what he's talking about, isn't he? So there's a marked emphasis on the rough male, who nonetheless can produce something beautiful. And I find that very intriguing, because it carries through into the arts and crafts movement and into such figures as C.R. Ashby, who also enormously admires masculine strength and has no time for what he and maybe Ruskin referred to as the feminine principle. Associates the feminine with the languid, which of course is absurd, but it's a curious thing in Ruskin, I think. He loves to think of the rough, crude workman producing something that expresses the spirit of life.
Yeah, but it's not simply that, because even here he talks about the rough masculine sort of work, and then he talks in the same way about the tenderness, which is part of
Yes,
that's
the
right.
exquisite tenderness.
He loves the contrast. He loves the idea that a rough workman can also be tender, as if tender towards his children or something like that. Yeah.
I must also point out that part of the reason why he's focusing on the masculine is that the overwhelming majority, if not the entirety, of the workmen would have been male. They would have required a good deal of strength and a good deal of skill, and skill in rough trades. And I think that is his focus on this particular point. Particularly since they're dealing with the concept of rigidity, of the idea of creating a structure. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, a little bit. This is a little bit earlier, but when he writes under this last, one of the enduring criticism against him by many of the critics was that it was, in many ways, effeminate, as though somebody who writes on matters having to do with caring for other human beings and taking care of them and loving their delicacy and their changefulness and all of this, it can't be a real man. And he had to fight back against that. And he may be sensing that as early as this. This is about 10 years before the onto this last.
No, a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that in that. The other thing I was interested in was his hinting at the ducal palace, which of course he then goes on to analyze in considerable detail a bit later. But he draws attention to the asymmetry of the ducal palace.
Yes.
And the history of the ducal palace, the Doge's palace, is pretty complex, and that asymmetry may have come about for exigent reasons that Ruskin might not have known about. And indeed, architectural historians now are very puzzled by that building.
Right.
They divide it, as Ruskin divided, into the Ziani and the Foscari periods of the 14th century and then the early 15th century. But there's still tremendous uncertainty as to how exactly that building was carried through. So I'm not certain that the asymmetry of the Doge's palace is that good an example to use from the point of view of what he's trying to say here. The virtues of asymmetry, in other words.
Yeah, but he's also using it as a paradox.
Emma.
In that the ducal palace looks symmetrical.
Yeah.
It has a symmetrical kind of feeling.
Yes,
but
then
if
you
look at it
realize
carefully.
But then you
analyze
realize
it, it's
exactly.
not.
Yeah, and you realize that two of the windows are lower.
Yes, exactly. It talks about the windows, the two windows in the
That's right.
seafront, seafront, because it says that they were built because they were functional to what was to the structure of the inside Salone Senato, and not to the facade. So he is making the point that is the priority was once again in people, in the life of people, in the way people had to meet, and according to me, rather than the facade, exactly than to people had to adapt themselves to the building. This is and for this reason it was beautiful in that awkward way in which Gothic buildings are beautiful. So
if you look at the Gothic, if you look at the ducal palace coming across an evaporetto from San Giorgio, let's say, you look at it and it's very lovely. And then as you get closer, you notice that these two windows are not in the same style. And you get a little closer and you realize that those two windows being not symmetrical is what gives the whole front a great liveliness that it would otherwise not possess. It's a stroke of architectural brilliance, he says. That I think he's quite right about that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, but that notion of growing from the inside out, say, Emma, that seems a crucial part of what he's admiring.
That's right.
Yeah.
And later, modern architecture would say that form follows function. I always wondered if they got that from Ruskin.
Exactly. He says the other way around.
Well, Pevsner thought that modern architects did get it from Ruskin. And he traces that idea from Ruskin through to Morris, the arts and crafts movement, and modernism. Form follows function. Yes.
I want to ask a question before we end here. There's a passage. It's a wonderful passage. I think it's in Lectures of Art, but I've forgotten where it is. And that's the question I'm asking. Who remembers where it is? Where he's in Edinburgh and he's looking down the Miracle Mile, and he looks at all the lions or tigers that have been sculpted by prior sculptors, and they're all exactly the same. And his basic point is that these are all dead. Nobody likes them, and they don't like them because they're all exactly the same. They're cookie cutter images of each other. And then he shows us a drawing of a real tiger I think it's by Burne-Jones. It's the illustration in the lecture, and it just blows my mind every time because it really puts the whole argument about the liveliness of life being involved in art and architecture front and center. Does anybody remember where that passage actually is?
I think lectures on art, isn't it?
I think so too, yeah, but I don't remember quite where.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I'll look it up.
It's the same period, 1851. So
yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
So
okay, Emma and Gabe, wrap this up.
We will.
Good.
Well, congratulations to all. We have spent a delightful year in Venice. whatever the weather in our particular locations, we spent a delightful year in Venice, courtesy of Emma and Miriam
My
and
pleasure and honor.
the Forge Center in Venice, who have brought Venice to us as we've been reading about it. Always a delightful thing to think. I look at Emma and I think, well, we're reading about Venice and she's
In Venice.
speaking to us from Venice.
Marvelous. Marvelous.
Yeah, marvelous, marvelous indeed. Emma, will you tell us maybe a little bit about the conference coming up in December?
The conference, yes, with pleasure. So we are we'll have a conference in less than 1 month on the 15th of December. 15th and 16th of December, we'll have a conference. I'll share with you the poster if you want, with the program and speakers.
Do that. That'd be great.
Yes, I'll send you the program of speakers, and also Gabriel is giving us a plenary lecture. So the conference is on Ruskin and mountains. This we thought that it was an important topic for Ruskin. There have been studies, but still a lot to say. And so it will be in 2 days. We have also been given by the University of Venice the Palazzo Ca' Foscari, so we'll be hosted there. The conference will be hosted in Ca' Foscari. So exactly, I mean, the place where which Ruskin studied extensively in 1845. And so there will be papers on Ruskin. Howard Hull is coming, Marcus Waithe, as well as Gabriel, and also German scholars presenting and studying mountains from the perspective of German authors, before Ruskin and after Ruskin. Then we have a French philosopher talking about mountains from the philosophical point of view. And then we'll also have cinema, mountains in the cinema, and seeing the way in which Ruskin might have been and inspire us somehow of this. So it will be a very rich conference. I'm very sorry we won't be able to do it online, so there won't be the possibility to attend. That's a pity. But
Emma, let me pause for a moment. Will you at least do videos of the different talks?
I don't know if we manage to do this. I can't promise, but we'll see. We'll see if we manage to.
Certainly, we have to have a video of Gabriel giving his talk.
Yes, we'll see. We'll see if I manage to do this. It's I know. I am very aware that it's a pity not to be able to share this, but we think that we'll have proceedings of some papers, but it's not the same. I agree. Now we are used to this. So and the nice thing is, together with the conference, we'll be able to have a small exhibition of Ruskin's of Ruskin's daguerreotypes of mountains.
Lovely.
From the Penrith Jacobson's exhibition. So we'll have all this, and we'll certainly inform you of all this, and I'll try to have videos of the talks. So this is in brief, and so I look forward to seeing Gabriel soon in Venice.
Yes, I'm packing already.
Yeah,
packing warm things.
Yes, warm, but
Yes,
yes, it's
yes.
not so cold. Not so
Yeah,
cold. Yes.
the theme of my talk will be John Ruskin and John Muir,
Yeah.
a
Right.
comparison
Gosh.
of visions between
Well, I
Ruskin.
would really like to
Mm.
see that,
Yeah,
hear that. Yeah.
very, very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a word, we're certainly wide open for suggestions. We are entertaining the idea that next year we would study um, the Eagle's Nest,
Mm.
which is Ruskin's 10 lectures on science and art.
Mm.
So we are these thinking that that might be at least where we start. We start with in the year.
And
So
And Gabriel, I had suggested we go to the Seven Lamps. It's small, it's accessible, and it's still true.
I know part of the difficulty we've had a lot of architecture this year, so I
Mm.
wanted to to shift to some other. With Ruskin, I mean, there is such a richness here of topic and so that we have no lack of directions to go in.
Mm.
So anyway, if Jim has made a suggestion. If anybody else has some ideas, let me know, and we will entertain them, and we will be then announcing the schedule of study sessions for 2026 very, very soon.
Great.
We
Good.
also
Thank
have
you.
upcoming, hold on just a moment, double check.
While he's double checking, thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, everybody who's been involved
Thank you all.
in the organization of these sessions. I've enjoyed them immensely. I've learned a lot. I've gone back to texts that long ago I read and then put aside. And you've all been great, and it's really been a lot of fun. And you've inspired me to go now and find the lectures on art and architecture so I can find that passage on Edinburgh and so much more.
Mm.
Wonderful.
Here, here.
And I
So
would
thank
like
you so much.
Yep.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very
Very well.
much.
Thank
I would
you.
like
Thank
to
you,
thank
Emma
Gabriel.
Thank
and
you.
Miriam and the Force Center for
Yeah.
leading us this whole year and enriching us immensely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It
I
was a
remember
great
the time
pleasure.
that
And
Thank
we
you.
did the study on the vestibule, and Emma brought a whole map of the approach to Venice, so we were able to locate each of these sites as we were reading. It was wonderful.
Great.
Uh,
Yes.
And Emma
the
and Gabriel, I'd like to thank you both, and I'd also like to thank all of the participants who contributed such a wealth of knowledge. Thank you.
terrific.
thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Well, this has become this has really become a marvelous forum, our little Armada study sessions. And so we really plan to, this is really a part of the Ruskin Art Club mission.
And it's truly international, and you're to be applauded for making that happen. I
Yep.
think it's just great.
Yep.
We're
Here,
delighted.
for that too.
We're delighted. Yes, so just a note about January 17th on Saturday evening, we will, it will be a Zoom event. We will, Philip Hoare will be lecturing on Blake.
Mm.
So that'll be our opening lecture for the for January for the new year. So
Will you'll circulate all of that
oh
to
yeah,
us?
oh yes,
Great.
the newsletter will be out soon with all the dates for 2026. 2026 is interesting because we are planning, we are still working on it, but we are planning on having a Gaudí year because this is the centenary of his death, and Gaudí was deeply influenced by Ruskin.
Mm.
So we want to, but the Ruskin lecture in September 2026 will be focused on that relationship between Gaudí and Ruskinian thought. So it'll be a very exciting year.
Terrific.
Excellent.
Great.
Well done, folks. Well done.
Yep.
Terrific.
Well done
Emma,
indeed.
again, thank you.
Bye. Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye.
I'm sending
Bye,
the
thank
post.
you.
And I assume we're all getting certificates.
Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
definitely.
Yes, you have to pass the quiz first, right?
Yes, the final exam. Yeah,
Yes.
that's it. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.